We welcome you back to True Blue. We also welcome back BYUtv football analyst Blaine Fowler. A lot has happened since this season ended. We had Cody and Kyle a moment ago, but let's talk about Robert Anae and what you've learned about the development of that situation.
You know, a lot of people have asked me during this week, wait a minute, didn't he get fired back, a couple of years ago? And the fact of the matter is he did not get fired before. There were some things going on. They weren't real productive as last year, and they were talking about changes. In the process of that, Mike Stoops approached Robert and asked if he would come and coach at Arizona, and Robert left. And so it wasn't a firing. And at the time, I think Bronco let him go because he always is supportive of guys that want to go do other things. And I think as the season progressed this year and Bronco realized with tough personnel issues, it would be good to have a very veteran guy, he thought back to Robert and I. And perhaps, and he didn't tell me this, Bronco did, but in my mind, I think Bronco's probably going, okay, in hindsight, maybe I should have done more to keep him here. Yeah. Because in the 6 years that he was at BYU, 5 of those years, they were very, very good offensively. And in the last year, they had quarterback issues and some injuries on the offensive line, much like they have the last couple years, and they weren't as productive. But certainly in the 5 years previous, they were very good offensively.
So Robert and I back as offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what is the big difference between an I offensive staff this time around as opposed to the one that he took over?
Well, when he came in the last time, you remember the staff was already in place,
right,
and Robert came in as the OC. And this time, Robert and Bronco will assemble that staff. They'll decide from the current staff, are they going to change assignments? Are they going to bring anybody new from the outside? And they're going to give him some input on the staff that he's going to have as an offensive coordinator. So have a little bit better grasp on who he's going to be working with. We know that Coach Reynolds is retired, so there's an opening there. We know that Coach Weber has taken a job with Utah State as their offensive line coach. So there's a couple of areas where they can juggle. We're still waiting to hear what Brandon Dolman is going to do. And certainly Brandon is a BYU guy. They love Brandon Dolman. He fits the mold here. And he was put in a tough situation with a team that had quarterback issues, had injuries at the quarterback position, an offensive line. As we look at the comparison of points per game, yards per game, passing yards per game, rushing yards a game, you look, and Robert had 6 years. 5 of 6 years we had really good quarterbacks in Max Hall and John Beck, right, and great tight ends, the all-time leading receiver, 2 of the all-time leading rushers in BYU history. So he did a great job. And before everyone thinks that Brandon did a terrible job, it's really tough to be an OC when you've got quarterback issues, and especially tough when your offensive line is dinged up and you don't have an offensive line. So I think Brandon will eventually be a good offensive coordinator, and he's got to make a decision now of whether or not he wants to be part of the thing here still and have a role at BYU someplace, or whether he wants to go and be an OC someplace else. But I think he has the ability to choose there.
The thing Cody was talking about a moment ago, which kind of stood out to me, is he was excited to have someone with experience who has done it before for his last go-round.
Well, and the one thing that Robert and I brings, and he talked about this when he was talking with Bronco, is that not only does he have the experience from being here and experiences before that at UNLV and at Texas Tech, but in the last 2 years, he's been part of 2 different staffs at Arizona that have been really good offensively. Right. First with Mike Stoops in that group, and then with Rich Rodriguez this last year, and 2 different styles. And so Robert will add some of the things he's learned there to what his experience that he already had at BYU and before that. And I think we'll see some new wrinkles and some new things. And Robert's a smart guy, always learning. So I think that with the tools that they have in place, if they can solidify the quarterback spot and keep that offensive line healthy, they've got skilled players all around that could lead to a very good offense next year.
Coming off that 8-5 season, they did get the bowl win. Bronco Mendenhall gets back Hoffman, he gets back Van Noy, and then he makes a change and brings back Anae. Those are 3 good gets for a coach to kind of help restore some optimism leading into such a difficult schedule in the fall.
Yeah, and having Van Noy back is a big deal defensively because you can build around him. And they need to have some pillars to build around with a schedule that they're going to play next year. This is the most robust schedule in BYU history. And Cody Hoffman, having those 2 guys back, it was great to have them on the show. It's even better to have them on the field next fall. They're guys that you can build around. BYU's big issues: establish a quarterback and keep him healthy when you're playing this type of a schedule. Shore up the offensive line, and then the unsung heroes all last year on this great defense were that defensive line. They've got some holes to fill there. If they can figure that out in spring ball through fall camp, this should be a very good BYU team next fall.
It doesn't take much for Cougar fans to get visions of grandeur, and I think they're back, and we're in the first week of January.
It's once you get to the offseason, then everybody's positive about the next. That's the way it goes, and they have reason to have optimism with what they've got, especially at the skill positions on both sides of the football. And I think Robert brings exactness back to the offense, discipline, those kinds of things. And you remember, he did have great passing games. 5 of the 6 years that he was here, they were top 25 offensively, and they were always good on third down. And so, the two most visible positions at BYU, it's not the president of the university. No offense to the president, the president, but it's playing quarterback, being the quarterback at BYU, and that offensive coordinator takes a lot of criticism. And so Robert's a veteran guy that can stand up to that.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Blaine.